Nobody warned Marcus. Not his HR department, not his financial advisor, not the hospital social worker who handed him a pamphlet with a 1-800 number and a sympathetic smile, not the government. Not a single person in his life sat him down and said, "If you do this, it will cost you everything." So he did it. Because what else do you do when your father can't get out of bed alone? He was 33 years old. He had a salary, a 401k, a LinkedIn profile with recommendations from people who respected him. He had a plan, the kind of plan you build carefully in your 20s when you still believe the future belongs to you. Then his phone rang.
And in the 5 years that followed, Marcus lost his career, his savings, his professional network, and the version of himself he'd spent a decade building. He didn't lose them to bad decisions. He lost them to love. Marcus is not an edge case. He is not an anomaly. He is not a cautionary tale about poor planning. He is one of 53 million Americans. According to the National Alliance for Caregiving and AARP, 53 million people in the United States are currently providing unpaid care to an aging parent, a seriously ill spouse, or a child with complex medical needs. 53 million. That is larger than the entire population of California.
And according to AARP's Public Policy Institute, the total value of that unpaid labor, the bathing, the medication management, the 3 a.m. emergencies, the endless phone calls to insurance companies, amounts to an estimated $600 billion every single year. $600 billion, absorbed silently by families, never reimbursed, never recognized, never counted in any economic policy conversation that actually matters. Go to Reddit right now and search r/caregivers. It has over 120,000 members. One post, titled, "I quit my job to take care of my mom. 3 years later, I have zero in savings, no career, and she just passed. What do I do now?" received thousands of upvotes and over 800 comments. Almost every single comment said some version of the same 4 words. This is my story.
This story is one of millions playing out across America right now. If this kind of honest storytelling matters to you, hit that like button. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Now, back to what this really means. These aren't people who failed the system. These are people the system never showed up for. So what actually happened to them? Marcus grew up in Cleveland. His father, a man named Raymond who worked 31 years at a machine parts factory, was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2018, early stage, manageable. Raymond was 64 years old and still driving himself to church on Sundays.
Marcus was 33. He was a project manager at an IT firm downtown. Good salary, real benefits, the kind of job that felt like proof that the plan was working. For the first year, he managed it from a distance. Weekend visits, phone calls every evening, groceries dropped off on Fridays. His mother had passed years earlier, and his sister lived in Phoenix with 3 kids of her own. The math was simple and brutal. There was no one else. Then Raymond fell. Not dramatically, not once and catastrophically. He just started falling. A stumble in the kitchen, a missed step on the porch,
A morning when Marcus drove over and found his father on the bathroom floor, confused and frightened, having been there for 2 hours. Marcus requested FMLA leave from his job, 12 weeks of unpaid, job-protected leave under federal law. He moved a hospital bed into his father's living room. He learned to administer medication on a schedule. He learned what a Hoyer lift was. He learned what it sounded like when someone who raised you calls out for help in the night. The 12 weeks ended. Raymond was not better. Raymond was not going to get better. That is the nature of Parkinson's. Marcus requested an extension. His company said they couldn't hold the position indefinitely. They said it with genuine regret. They sent a fruit basket. He resigned. He told himself it was temporary. He would find part-time remote work. He would figure out the money. He had savings, 8 months of runway if he was careful. He would be back in the job market within a year. That was 5 years ago. The savings lasted 14 months. The part-time remote work was real but inconsistent and impossible to maintain on the days Raymond needed him, which became most days. Marcus's LinkedIn profile still showed his last employer. He stopped updating it somewhere around year 2. Not because he gave up, because updating it felt like admitting something he wasn't ready to admit. Here is what the caregiving conversation in America always gets wrong. It frames this as a story about sacrifice. Noble, painful, redemptive sacrifice. The devoted child, the selfless love, the moral clarity of choosing family over career. And there is truth in that frame, real, genuine truth. Many caregivers describe the years they spent with a dying parent as the most meaningful of their lives. Difficult, devastating, but meaningful. One post on r/aging parents put it plainly. I would do it again, every single day, but I want people to know what it actually costs, because nobody told me, and I wasn't prepared. That's the part the sacrifice narrative leaves out, the cost. According to AARP's 2021 research, the average family caregiver spends 26% of their personal income directly on caregiving expenses, medical supplies, home modifications, transportation, medication gaps not covered by insurance. 26%. On top of the income they're no longer earning. A MetLife Mature Market Institute study, still one of the most cited in the field, found that female caregivers lose an average of $324,000 in wages, pension contributions, and Social Security benefits over a lifetime of caregiving. Not a bad year, a lifetime. And then there is the part that never makes it into the statistics, the invisible cost. One member of r/caregivers described it this way. The hardest part isn't the work. It's that nobody sees you. You disappear. Your friends stop inviting you places. Your professional contacts move on. You become invisible to the world that used to know you. And when it's over, you're supposed to just walk back in like no time has passed. But here's what the data actually shows. They can't just walk back in. A 2022 Bureau of Labor Statistics report found that 34% of caregivers who left employment reported significant difficulty re-entering the workforce, with many taking positions at dramatically lower salary levels than they held before. Not a temporary setback, a permanent financial reset. This is where you have to zoom out. Because if you only look at Marcus, you might think this is a story about one man's hard circumstances, one family without enough support, one gap in the system. But $600 billion does not happen by accident. The American health care and elder care system was not built on the assumption that the government would absorb the cost of aging. It was built deliberately, structurally, over decades, on the assumption that families would. Specifically, that women would. That love would function as an unpaid labor subsidy. That obligation would fill the gap that policy refused to. As of 2023, according to the National Partnership for Women and Families, only 11 U.S. states have any form of paid family caregiver program. 11. The federal government offers FMLA, 12 weeks of unpaid leave with no income replacement, and considers the matter largely addressed. Germany has a federal caregiver insurance program. Japan has mandatory long-term care insurance for everyone over 40. The United Kingdom offers a carer's allowance, a direct payment to people providing substantial care. The United States offers a pamphlet. Researchers at the Family Caregiver Alliance have documented that between 40 and 70% of family caregivers show symptoms of clinical depression. Not sadness, not stress, clinical depression at rates that dwarf the general population. And yet there is no national conversation, no policy momentum, no presidential speech about the 53 million Americans quietly bankrupting themselves out of love and obligation. Because acknowledging the scale of this crisis would require acknowledging who built it and who benefits from it continuing exactly as it is. We have told ourselves a very comfortable story about caregiving in America. We call it a family value. We call it love. We call it what good people do. And we mean it, genuinely, sincerely. The love is real. The devotion is real. Nobody who has sat beside a dying parent at 2 a.m. is performing anything. But here is what we never say out loud. The system counted on that love. It planned for it. It built a $4 trillion healthcare economy on the foundational assumption that millions of Americans would absorb the hardest, most labor-intensive, most expensive part of care for free, because they couldn't say no to the people they loved. They didn't sacrifice their careers for their parents. They subsidized a $1 trillion system that never planned to pay them back. Marcus didn't fall behind because he made poor choices. Marcus was extraction. His salary, his retirement contributions, his professional trajectory, all of it was quietly redirected into a gap the system created and chose not to fill. And when it was over, when Raymond passed, in the winter of 2022, in the living room where Marcus had moved the hospital bed, the system had no category for what Marcus was now. Not unemployed, not retired, not a student. Just a 38-year-old man with a 5-year gap on his resume, and the particular exhaustion of someone who gave everything and was never once asked if they could afford to. It turns out we've been measuring the wrong things. We count what the economy produces. We never count what it consumes. Marcus is back in the job market now. He updated his LinkedIn last spring. Under the 5-year gap, he wrote, "Provided full-time care for an ill family member." Most recruiters don't ask about it. The ones who do ask once, nod, and move on to the next question. Nobody has asked him what it cost. Nobody has asked what he learned, or what he lost, or what it felt like to watch the version of himself he'd built slowly become unrecognizable. Nobody has asked if he's okay. He is applying for positions 2 levels below where he was when he left. He calls that realistic. There are 53 million Americans who understand exactly what that word means in that context. So here is the question nobody in Washington is asking, but maybe you should be. When a society is built on love it refuses to compensate, what does that tell you about what that society actually values? If this video made you think, hit that like button.